Okay, so the article that I had was titled Starting a Company in Brazil, Not for the Faint of Heart. And it basically describes the difficulties that one goes through when they're trying to start a company or business in Brazil. So you have an idea of where Brazil is economically. Here are just some very basic figures. They have a population of almost 200 million, a GDP of about 2.5 trillion, and a GDP growth of 0.9%, which was down 1.8% from the previous year. And as you can see, all of these figures are from 2012. So why is starting a business in Brazil so difficult? Well, Brazil is notorious in the entire business world for making it unnecessarily difficult for businesses both large and small to start. The World Bank estimates that it takes, on average, 130 days, $900, and 43 documents to get the business approved and to open the business. Although people who have gone through the approval process say that the truth is much larger than that. They say it takes upwards of 6 months to get your business started, and a lot of this time is spent taking care of administrative issues, dealing with boards, and meeting requirements, such as having visas, local residency, proving your local residency, and registering with Brazil's Business Bureau. Just to give you an example of some of these administrative issues that startup companies have to go through, let's look at the fire departments in Brazil. The local fire department must sign off on any startup companies and approve them for safety. And while safety is an important matter, the process is much longer than it should be and is extremely inefficient. The fire department will come in and inspect the potential business location, which must meet rigorous standards. If the layout is approved, then the business itself is on its way to approval. However, this process costs upwards of $200 and takes up a great deal of time. For whatever reason, some potential business owners may need to start their business in a shorter amount of time, and there is one major way that they can do that. In Brazil, law firms buy foreclosed companies, and these are called shell companies. If a potential business owner buys a shell company, then half the process is already taken care of. Like we talked about in the last slide, the fire department has already signed off on the layout and location, and all of the requirements that need to be met by the building and the layout are already filled. This can cut the time in half, however it does cost much more since the potential business owner has to buy the company. So let's take a look at what these administrative difficulties do to Brazil's economy in terms of supply and demand. And for this example, we're going to use computer companies in Brazil. As you can see from the graph, the demand for computers stays the same as it would if there were many companies producing computers. However, since it is very hard to start a business, there is very little incentive for companies to start producing computers and therefore fewer companies. This creates a downward shift in the supply curve. Obviously, these administrative difficulties make it very hard to start a business in Brazil. But what are these difficulties doing in terms of how the world sees Brazil and Brazil's economy? Brazil is ranked 130th out of 185 countries ranked by World Bank in terms of overall performance in doing business. If you look at the figures from the economic snapshot in the previous slide, you can see that their GDP growth is only 0.9%, which is down 1.8% from the previous year of 2.7%. Now, the GDP is an overall indicator of the health of the economy, and if the GDP is not doing well, that's a sign that the economy may not be doing well, especially when there is very little growth. Now, obviously, Brazil would like to reverse this trend of very slow economic and GDP growth. However, they can't do this very easily if they make it very difficult for new businesses to start up. If a new business is very difficult to start up, fewer will start, meaning that the gross domestic product will continue to grow very slowly or not even grow. When a country reaches a point where the economic outlook is not so good if the negative trend continues, the question has to be asked, can the country turn it around? In the case of Brazil, they are very lucky that they are having economic downturn at this particular time. Brazil is about to play host to both the Olympics and the World Cup, and they should use this opportunity to the fullest advantage. These two events will give Brazil great exposure in the eyes of the world. They can show the world that they are still an economically relevant and responsible country. It will also give them great exposure in terms of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs will now see Brazil as a new ground for them to bring their business. And if Brazil gets rid of these administrative difficulties that get in the way of starting a new business, these entrepreneurs could start businesses all over Brazil and create a boom in the nation's GDP.